So in ministry and in church planting, we all know raising funds is a huge part of the process. Well, recently at New City Church, we raised $117,515 in financial commitments in just 3 weeks. And so in this episode, we're going to share 4 thoughts on how in the world that actually happened.
Welcome back to Practical Church Planting, where in 15 minutes or less, we'll give you practical tips, advice, and encouragement to help you plant and grow healthy churches. My name is Brian Androsi, and joining me today is Dylan Dotson.
That's
Dylan,
right.
It's freezing in here, just so you know.
It is not cold that much.
It is freezing. And today we're going to talk about 4 thoughts on raising exactly $117,515 in 3 weeks.
That is right.
21 days.
So a couple weeks ago, we presented to our church a possibility of moving to a new space.
Yes.
Which we've been praying for a lot. Long story short, it was looking like it was all the details are working out. Mm-hmm. And so we said we need to raise this amount of money to make it happen. We told our people we need to raise $75,000.
Yep.
Now, I guess we should be clear. When we say raise, we mean we got it in commitments.
Yeah.
But still over only 6 months.
Yeah, it's not a huge period of time.
And so ultimately the commitments came in at $117,515. It'll be given through November through May.
Yeah.
And we've already taken in like 40% of that. A lot of people give some stuff up front. So that's a significant amount of money.
Yep.
We went from, again, 2 weeks before we told people we need money to like not even knowing where our new space was going to be to like having money that people were talking about. And the cool thing is our goal was $75,000.
Yeah. Because
I thought this whole time we kind of considered it would probably be $100,000 to $115,000 to make the move. Mm-hmm. But I thought if we said $100,000, people would just be like, we're not going to be able to hit that.
Crazy.
And
and a few things like in cases like the first time listening, we are a pretty small church. Yeah. Like we're not a huge church, and it would have been interesting to get the percentage. I don't know it off the top of my head, but that's a large amount for what we raise annually. That's a big chunk for us.
Yeah. I mean, significant.
Yeah.
So, so we're just going to talk about kind of what happened there and why we think that goal was able to happen, because it wasn't just us being awesome.
Not even close.
And so here we go. Here are 4 thoughts on how that happened in just a 3-week time frame. Yep. Number 1 is that people need to know that there is a need. So this wasn't like hey guys, we want to move, and we need money to move, and so let's raise money.
Yeah.
Like we had been talking about all year about us praying for a space to a bigger space for us to be. We are completely capped out on where we are. Yep. Our kids space, thankfully, is a Taekwondo studio right next to us where our kids are at. Like it's just tight. There's not a lot of room. We are at 2 services. We tried a 3rd service. We don't have the people, the capacity to pull that off. And so we're kind of stuck. And so we've been praying all year for this to happen. And so when it actually presented itself that there was a space, it wasn't like we were telling our people for the first time we've been looking and we need to move. It's like, they knew that this was a need. Yep. And so when the need actually arose, it made it a lot possible to accomplish that goal. I think sometimes maybe the leadership team or the staff knows like there's a goal or something, but then we don't tell anybody. And then we tell everybody, and then it's like, why aren't they on board? The benefit for what happened to us is for like 9 months, we've been mentioning, hey, if you can pray, you look for people that asked, and we had no updates, but at least people knew. And so when there came an opportunity, it wasn't shocking to everybody.
Yeah, I think that things like adding the 3rd service was big because it showed people that we're exhausting all the resources we have. Right. Like it's not, we're outgrowing. And so our first jump is to immediately we need to raise a bunch of money to move. Yeah. And that's just our first knee-jerk reaction. But we tried all these different things, and we gave people, you gave people pretty frequent updates. Granted, almost always the update was there's no update. But like we were mentioning like, hey, just so you know, this is something that we're trying to do and we're thinking about. And we don't have any leads, but it was in front of people's faces for a long time.
Yeah, and 3 services works, but when you're 150 people, it's just really hard to do 3 services the way that you want to do them. And so people knew that there was a need. That was a big thing. Secondly, that people also need to feel that there was a need. Yeah. And so fortunately for us, the 2 main weeks that we were saying, hey, be praying and considering, and then let us know. And then the following Sunday was like the last day to let us know, or the 2 biggest Sundays we've had as a church. Yeah. So that really helped. Yep. Like completely auditorium where there's no more room and there's no more chairs and it was completely cramped. So that helped. But even if they weren't our biggest, like it's been full all fall. Yeah. And so there wasn't just like an intellectual, like it would be nice to move. Like people knew, again, the 3 service thing, like they're sitting in here, there's no space. And so again, part of it when it comes to fundraising is that people don't just need to know about it, but they need to actually feel it, because it's not just about intellectual knowledge, it's about emotion, because we actually make decisions primarily based off emotion, not our intellect. And so again, it makes it easy when we say, hey, we need to raise this much money. or whatever the situation you might be wanting to raise money in, or for whatever it is, like they need to know about it and they need to feel it. Our people clearly felt it, and we're saying things like, we need a new space, so that again, when something came available, it made it much more easier to get people to commit to give financially because they knew about it, but they also felt it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a different example of when you need to raise like this amount of money other than moving. But if we were telling people we need to move, even if we as like leadership knew for whatever reason, we knew we were going to outgrow it in the future, or maybe the area wasn't a good area, whatever. If there was a reason that we knew we had to move, but people didn't feel it, it would have been so much more difficult. But like people, and it's not saying you always, if you're going to move, you always have to wait until you literally like don't have another seat to move. You know, I mean, we would have, that's not normal, but like, people were feeling it, and people were feeling like this is clearly not going to work long term. Right. And so just, if whatever it is, or people can actually feel the need for it, it's not something you have to convince them of, like getting up here and like, this is why we need to do it over and over and trying to get people bought in. But like, it's a no-brainer. Whether you're new or old, you know that something's got to happen.
And it reduced a lot of the questions too, because no one was like, why are we moving? Because we talked about it, they've been feeling it. I think the fact that we've been talking about it made them feel it. I don't know if this makes any sense, quicker. Like, it's one thing to be full, but it's one thing to be like, oh yeah, like we've been talking about it and it is full. And so those are just two things that you have to have, I think, when it comes to fundraising money successfully, is it needs to be in front of people over a long period of time, and they need to like know that it's not just like a good idea because a church wants something, but they like, oh, we actually need this to happen. So that's number 2. Number 3, and we've talked about this before when it comes to church planting, and this just kind of, again, solidified for me, this idea that shorter time frames are better than longer time frames. Now, generally speaking, getting people to commit $117,000 at our size in 3 weeks is probably not normal. Right. But it's still like, it's better because it's better than the alternative of like, let's take 4 months to pray about it and consider and to see what God might have you do. Like, there's just some initial momentum when something is announced for the first time. Yeah. And so when we said, hey, this new space is available, you know, it was kind of nice on my end because I didn't have time to like do all this vision casting. Like, we didn't even change any of our sermons, even those mainly those 2 weeks that we were really raising the money. Like, I mentioned it like 2 minutes in each of those sermons, and then at the end of the service, I spent a minute or two. Yeah. We had emails and stuff like that too, but like, it was just like, this either is happening or it's not. And because it's like, we need to make a decision now, I think there's benefit because again, they felt the need, they knew the need. I think sometimes we can drag things out too long, especially when it comes to church planting. It's like when you tell someone, I mean, obviously there's a difference between like telling people close to you that you're thinking about, you're praying about this, but when it comes to launching like your website and your social media and your first big public announcement that it's happening, if you're not launching for a year or more, like a lot of that excitement, it's like, what do I got to do with it? Yeah. But if you're 9 or 6 months away, it's like we hit the ground running, and like from day one, we know there's something to do. And so I think for us, it helped us knowing that like the space that we had to move into, the part of the reason why it was only 3 weeks is because they needed to know, or else they were going to move on. So it's like, it's not like it was our grand idea. But again, shorter time frame, people knew that they needed to take an action. So they prayed about it, thought about it for a week, and then they let us know. And honestly, as holy as we like to pretend that we are, like that's all people are going to do. And so like they know whether or not they're bought in or not. And so shorter time frame, it actually moved people to action, which I think is a really big benefit in this situation. Yeah. Like I'm not trying to be like Mr. Cynical over here or anything like that, but people don't need a huge amount of time to talk to their spouse. They need to talk to their spouse. They need to pray about it. They need to do these things, but they don't need a month to do it. And like, honestly, and like, it's just the way like most people, if you give them a month, they're going to wait till last week anyways. Right. And so it's exactly. Just, and most of us do the same thing. Like, it's just, people don't spend that much time thinking about one thing. It's just the way it is. And so to give people all this time of like pray about it for a month, it just drags things out longer than it really needs to. Yeah. And not to be, I guess the reality situation is too, like, you can't speak to everyone's situation, but most of us in America like could be more generous. I think the statistics are the average churchgoer gives like 2 or 3% of their income to their church. And so it's like the money is there. Yeah. It's just a matter of getting people to take those steps. And so again, I don't know that I would necessarily recommend 3 weeks only, but like it's better than like, let's take 6 months to decide what we're going to give and then start the giving process. Whatever this means for you, whenever you're fundraising, again, especially when it comes to church planting, if you're trying to fundraise for a church that's not going to be launching till 2 years, I wouldn't give to it, and I'm all about church planting. Like you've got to have some closer timelines, and so shorter was better than longer is what we found out was helpful for that. And the other thing when it comes to like if you're raising money for church planting or moving or whatever, in the grand scheme of things, it's like I get in our situation was different because there's such a short time frame, but in the grand scheme of things, it's probably unlikely it'll work. Like, and if you look at like overall statistics, whatever, you know, like most churches don't actually plant, and most churches aren't
I mean, maybe not most, but a lot of churches aren't growing. And so even if you say you want to grow to move in a year or whatever, that might not actually happen. And so and that's just the way it is. And so to be doing this thing over this long period of time, it's kind of understandable for people to be like, I kind of want to wait till we get closer to see if this thing is actually going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah. And so again, short time frame was helpful for us there. Fundraising, church planning, we're a fan of it.
Yeah.
And then fourthly, we put it this way, that we were hopefully honest about what was at stake. Not like, I hope we were honest, but like we were, and I think people appreciated this. We said, we want to move. Like, this is the only space that we have found all year that's in the area that we want to be in. It's only like 5 to 7 minutes from where we currently are. Yeah. It's already upfitted for a church, which saves who knows how much money. Yeah. Like, there's a lot of things in our favor. If we don't raise the money, we're not moving. And it's not like in a condemning way, but it's just like, if we want to do this, let's do this. And if not, then we're going to be here for a while. And I just think, again, you don't want to be all doom and gloom, but like people need to know what's at stake. I think sometimes we can be like, just, this is going to be awesome. Or would you please give to us? Like, people need to know what happens if we raise the money, but they also need to know what happens if you don't. And because our people are awesome and they're bought in, and I think it's helpful to talk about how, just reminding people that the church is not for us. It's about us being flexible to reach people. And so keeping that in front of them. But at the end of the day, like, we were just like, this is going to happen or it's not. And because people felt the need, they knew the need, there wasn't all this time to make a decision. Like, I think part of the reason we had it is because we said, if it doesn't work out, we're staying here, which I know is kind of like, why would you say that? But it was just the reality of the situation. Yeah. And we didn't want to tell people, hey, we didn't raise the money, we actually have to stay here. Like, we wanted people to know that up front as opposed to have to tell them after the fact. And I think it was helpful. Yeah.
I mean, we were very honest about it, like, especially like as a staff. I mean, maybe to a fault, where you'd say we weren't faithful enough. I don't know, but like we had no idea before that afternoon, before like the afternoon after church of us getting the commitments. Of like the day before, we were having conversations of like, what's our cutoff if we don't hit 70? Like you said, our initial goal is 75,000. Like, would we say we're not moving at 60 or 65? Like, we were. And maybe we had more, we're pessimistic people, but maybe we had more of this conversation than we should. But like, also we didn't want to be like.
Well, I also felt bad because you guys would ask and I wouldn't say anything because I knew that if we didn't hit 70, like if we hit 60, like it's close, but I knew that we were going to spend so much more money than 75,000.
We might not be able to afford it if we hit 75,000 at this point. Like,
we would have somehow prayed and made it work, but we would have been tight. I don't know how we would have done it.
But like by the grace of God, it happened. But like if it didn't happen and we were just from stage of like, this is going to happen, we're so, like nothing but this is happening and then it doesn't, that's so much more of a blow to morale. Yeah. When at the end of the day, if it didn't happen and we stayed here, it's not like we're going under. It's not like it's this terrible thing. It's, it's unfortunate, but we continue and it's been great and it's going to continue that way. So like, it's just, hopefully honest, which is a weird way to put it.
Now, I want to be clear too. There's a difference between raising money to move and planning a church in this regard. Like if you're planning a church and you're to tell your would-be, hopefully to supporters, hey, if you guys don't give, this church is going to knock it off the ground. Like, they're not, I mean, they want it to, but it doesn't really hurt them in the sense of like, when they're already invested in coming to the church, they want to see it happen. So I would just caution you, like, there's a little bit difference if you're raising money to plant a church. I probably wouldn't say like, if you don't help me if we don't hit this goal, this doesn't happen, because it doesn't like affect them that much as if it's their own church. But if you are raising money to move or to buy equipment, like after you've been around and people are bought in, like it's helpful to be honest about where you're at. You still want to be optimistic and give people a vision and excitement about hitting the goal, but people need to know all the ramifications. And if they're excited, like for me, what was most exciting was not the number, but was the number of people that gave. So it was slightly above our average number of giving units for the entire year, or pledged to give to this, which means ultimately that people are excited. Like if it was just a couple of givers that gave tons of money, that would be a bad sign. But people are bought in, people are excited about it, and again, but 2 months ago at this point, we didn't know what we were going to do for space, and the fact that in just a few weeks' time, we then had the financial commitments to actually make the move is pretty crazy. But those are some of the reflections that we have of how that happened.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
And in those few short months, who knows how many months, but you'll see a different background.
That's right. And a few short months. So thanks for listening today. Again, you can always go to practicalplanting.com/questions. If you have fundraising questions, want us to talk about something in a future episode, or join the Practical Church Planting Facebook group. That's another way you can do that.
You can.
And that'd be great. Thanks for being with us. We'll be with you next time on Practical Church Planting. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Practical Church Planting. Whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Practical Planting, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, make sure you like or subscribe or do whatever it's telling you to do or should do on that platform.
And hey, if you are so tired of looking at our ugly faces, but you're not tired of listening to our beautiful voices, then you can find our podcast if you just search Practical Church Planning on iTunes or Google Play. Make sure not to just find it, not just to listen, but to subscribe.
Make sure you subscribe. Brian, tell them to subscribe.
Subscribe.
See you next time.